I'm the oldest child in a family of 3 daughters and no sons. The sex education that the 3 of us received consisted of a few sentences at the dinner table explaining that my aunt and uncle were getting a divorce because my aunt was having a baby that wasn't my uncle's. Do you understand how that works? We all said yes and went back to eating and chatting, as inevitably a group whose core is a group of 3 teenage girls does. 20 years later was the next conversation related to sex with either of my parents. My father sat me down when I was visiting and explained that he and my mother would be completely supportive if me or my sisters would ever get pregnant and would help us care for the child. He shared his anger at the legality of abortion and the murderers among us. At the time, none of us were married or mothers. I listened patiently and thanked him for sharing his concerns. I didn't tell him that I had already had an abortion at 22. I didn't tell him that I had already gone with several of my fellow students at Notre Dame when they had abortions, because I'm sympathetic, supportive, and a local who knew where the clinics were in those days before Google Maps. I didn't tell him that the overwhelming emotion that any of us had ever felt about our abortions was relief that we had the option and compelling motivation to get and consistently use birth control until we wanted to and were ready to have children. These were all very early stage abortions, no different in our minds than the frequent miscarriages women have during their first trimesters. My father has grown ever more focused on abortion. He is unwilling to discuss or support policies and programs that reduce abortions, such as sex education, access to birth control, improvements to foster care and adoption options, the responsibilities of men in sexual relationships, and so forth. When I did bring this perspective up with him 10 years ago, he began yelling that I had been brainwashed by Obama. Turns out, Obama and I are in complete agreement on this issue, as I found out when I went home and did some research on the internet. We can't have any conversation about politics because he is a single-issue voter, and that issue is abortion. He can connect it to topics as diverse as transportation and climate change. During a recent conversation, when he made a false statement about the Trump administration's recently released budget proposal, after I gently corrected him, he quickly turned the conversation back to Obama and abortion. And so I took the opportunity to tell him that I am pro-choice. I've made a little chink in the wall. I imagine it being about a brick in size, about the height of a little girl's eyes to see through. He will always be my father, and I will always be his daughter. And sometimes we have to agree to disagree so that we can continue to see and love experiences and conversations with each other. It is a wall that can prevent us from irreparably harming each other. It is not a wall that needs to come down.